house because I've been watching so much Caps, so much Wizards. A little bit of downtime here and some late nights with the Wizards and the Caps getting into the weekend. They're all getting out of the building down in D.C., the Verizon Center, to make way for the Big Ten tournament. Maryland will be the last team to see on Friday night. They are the 3 seed. They will play some amalgamation of Rutgers, Ohio State, or Northwestern in that game. The great Johnny Holiday, 29 years young and still holding, and the longtime voice of all things Maryland bad. How many years have you done Maryland, John? When was the first year for you? I don't even know.
No, the first year, Nestor, was 1979.
Really? I thought it was even before that.
It was Lefty's year, and I remember we won the first game that I broadcast for him, and he said, I think I'm going to keep you around.
Isn't that nice of Lefty? And then,
oh, yeah.
This has been...
So 1979, so this is year number 38.
All right, well, listen, before we even get to the current team, I just want to say this. For you, all the years you've done this, and you've always been so kind to me, 25 years of doing this. I went down to a couple Terps games earlier this year, and I've been in Australia, New Zealand. I know you know that. And before that, they put together these beautiful videos of the history of the Terps, and I am a Terrapin, and all of that stuff. And then Lefty comes back. Then they come back for the one team that cut the nets down. It's been a nice couple of weeks for anyone that has some romance about the Terps, and I think for anybody that does have romance about the Terps, you've been a part of all of it. You've outlasted Gary, you outlasted Lefty. You might still get another championship in a couple of weeks, but it's been a really nice thing that there is a history that they can wrap their arms around. That's wonderful.
You hit the nail right in the head, Nestor. I was so happy that finally the hatchet's been buried with Lefty, who in no way was responsible for the demise of Len Bias. Even though people would point that way, that was the farthest thing from the truth. There's no way you could blame him for that. That's my opinion, anyhow. And then to have him honored here was terrific. A couple of weeks ago, he came to town, and we had a luncheon with him, and all the former players came back, or at least a lot of them did. And it was like old home week, and he just regaled everybody with stories and tales about every single guy. And then we had a little question and answer, kind of a little, they call it the chat with the legends, and we had Albert King up there, and we had Buck Williams up there with me and Lefty, and that was phenomenal. And when he walked on the floor, the place went nuts. And I did a pregame interview with him, and I said, Coach, whenever you're introduced today, before these fans, they're going to take the roof off this place. They're going to go crazy. And his response, in typical Lefty Drizel fashion, they might boo me like that Trump guy. I don't know. They may boo me like that guy in Trump, whatever his name is.
Oh, man, his press conferences were legendary.
He was great. And then, last weekend or 2 weekends ago, they brought back the Final Four team, and the first team that got to the Final Four in the national championship team. And I think it all goes back to Kevin Anderson. Kevin, the athletic director, sees that there's so much tradition in Maryland basketball, and so many people still hanging on and clinging to those memories of the terrific days that Lefty had with Elmore, McMillan, and Greg Manning, and Albert King, and Buck Williams, and all those guys that just did wonders for the program. And then he also recognized what Gary did to win the first ever national championship. He's the guy behind those two guys being recognized, Lefty and the national championship team. And he put the thing together with over at the president's house with certain people there to kind of celebrate it with him. And I think he wants to, as well as Turgeon wants to, and the head football coach, D.J. Durgan, they want to connect with the past. They don't want people to forget about it. And I think there was a tendency, some years ago, that's bygone days. We're forget about that. What we care about now. But I think they care about those people. And I know, for one, when we do a show with Coach Turgeon, every week we have a former player on with us to reminisce about his days. We go back to the days of Gene Shue in the 50s, then we go through the 60s. I mean, every decade of Maryland basketball we cover. And they never want to lose touch of what those guys did and how the fans attach themselves to the players, and they will never be forgotten. I like that. I think it's great to keep that in mind.
Well, I think it's awesome that, Walt Williams sits 3 feet behind you, at games, and I get to say hello to him. And, for the Len Elmores, for all the guys, I mean, Taj Holden's a Facebook friend, and, through Gravis and, through – I had Torrey Smith on last week, and he talked to, so lovingly about the basketball team and the program. And, you go down there and see Cole Fieldhouse going to kind of get ripped apart right now, and it's going to be something bigger and better when it's all done. I love the connection to all of it, and you certainly feel that when the flag is unfurled. And honestly, Johnny, it went away for a period of time, and you've been there long enough. Look, I go back to Elmore and McMillan and Lucas. That was my first team. David Thompson hitting his head on the backboard was one of the first memories I have, and the overtime loss, and not making the tournament, and UCLA, the East. Those are my first memories. And when you came aboard in '79, I remember getting the old Toyota ACC guides, where you'd look through and see Jeff Lamp and Lee Raker and Phil Ford, and you'd learn to hate the other teams the way you're supposed to. Spinarkle,
Jim Thacker, you had Thacker and Packer doing the games.
Absolutely. And,
Jim Thacker and Billy Packer.
And, you've been a voice through all of these years. It's just nice that it's been celebrated this year. And more than that, with this Big Ten tournament, I guess this is sort of a whisk into where we are this week. This is a big deal. And, and I know, look, I mean, you've been a member of the Maryland community and the family there. It was a very, very tough thing, this move, ACC to the Big Ten. There was a lot of hand-wringing. I don't know what side of the fence when you went home and talked to your wife and your family, like, I would rather we stay in the ACC than the Big Ten. Maybe you felt that way. I was always a fence sitter, Johnny, and now that we're 3 years into this thing, I love the Big Ten. I love everything about it. I don't miss much about the ACC at all. I wasn't like you going to those buildings down in Greensboro and Wake Forest and whatnot and seeing those places, but I know you're seeing these places, and I know this is a really good spot to be, and I think if you're a Terps fan and you're going down there on Friday night or down there at any point this weekend for any of the games, you'll feel how large Indiana and Michigan State and Michigan, because they're going to travel in this week for the cherry blossoms, for the novelty of it, because it's never been there. It's going to New York next year. But I think this Big Ten tournament's really going to, not that anything needs solidifying at this point, Johnny, but I think people are going to see it with their eyes open for what the Big Ten represents.
Well, I was like you. I said at the very beginning when they announced they're going to move, I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. Now, hold on a second. How can you leave the ACC with Duke and Carolina? Well, that was then. Look at it now. The ACC now is in no shape or form like it used to be. I mean, Pittsburgh's in there now, Syracuse in there now, Notre Dame. I mean, all these schools, they really don't belong in the ACC, are all in there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But for Maryland to go to the Big Ten, I think it was a no-brainer because of the exposure. You got the Big Ten Network. You can get every single game, not only in men's basketball, any athletic competition in the Big Ten. It's televised all around the nation. With the ACC, you had only a select network that covered the states that the teams were in. So you didn't go up to Michigan. You didn't go up to Ohio. You couldn't pick up a game in South Dakota or Minnesota or Nebraska like you can now.
Johnny, they'd serve me a Piggly Wiggly's ad, and I never knew Piggly Wiggly's around here. You know?
That's exactly right. There was Piggly Wiggly in Miami when I was growing up because I was a bag boy at Piggly Wiggly. They had a lot of money taking those bags out.
Man, that's why you got the spokesperson job there, because you really grew up in it.
But I got to agree with you that the move to the Big Ten has been fantastic. And everywhere we go on the road, whether it's East Lansing, Michigan, whether it's Purdue or Wisconsin or out west in Nebraska or Iowa, wherever we go, the fans are absolutely delightful. They're great to deal with. They love their team, but they have a lot of respect for the opponents as well. And every time Maryland goes in, we talk to the opposing coach. They couldn't be nicer. We talk to the opposing sports information guys, anything you guys need. And when you're the new guy on the block, it's a little bit tough because you're kind of going your own different direction and you're trying to earn the respect of people. They don't know you from Adam.
Yeah, you have no relationships there.
There's no relationship whatsoever.
You knew the ticket taker in Clemson because you've been going there for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but in the Big Ten, I think every broadcaster I come in touch with, one is better than the other one. They're all delightful. And I'm like one of the babies of the broadcasters in the Big Ten. I think there's 4 guys or maybe 5 guys who have more than 38 years with their school.
So there's Vince Scully.
The guy in Indiana's got 41 or 42 years. And, I mean, they're all terrific, terrific people. And they spend time with you. And I just think it was the right move. And you can see what the women did. The women win the Big Ten, tournament again. And for Maryland, the Maryland women.
Sure.
And then now you got the men with a chance to, do some damage against some very good teams. And when you play Purdue, when you go up against Michigan State or Indiana, any of these schools, it's always going to be a battle every single time you play them. So I like it. I like it very much, and it's been a good move. It's only going to get better, too. And this is the first time, of course, it's the first time only because Maryland's in the Big Ten, that they've been here in Washington. And you watch, there'll be no tickets available. I mean, maybe after the first couple of teams lose, you can get some, like you could do the same thing at Greensboro, wherever the ACC tournament went. But, I think back to those conference days in the tournament in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You go to Greensboro, you maybe went to Atlanta a couple of times, but it just Charlotte a couple of times. It wasn't the same the last couple of years as it was 10 or 15 years ago. Everything changes, and sometimes people say, well, it doesn't make much sense for Maryland to be in the Big Ten. How do you think the people in West Virginia feel in the Big 12? I mean, try to figure that out. So, things change. If you don't change with the flow, you get lost in the shuffle. So you got to make the best of whatever the situation's going to be. And I think Maryland's done that.
Spoken like the young man that he is. Johnny Holiday joining us here. Of course, you can follow his journey out on Twitter at Holiday Kid. He'll be calling the game this week. Maryland with the late game. Probably get started around 9 o'clock or thereabouts. Going to be taking on either Rutgers, Ohio State, or Northwestern. And it's such a mess with all these 14 teams and the double byes and all that. Johnny, a couple of years into this and after all this travel, what's the price that Maryland has paid for being in the Big Ten at this point? Like, you've been on all these airplanes and flying around and going out into the middle of, none of these things are particularly close beyond Penn State and Rutgers. Difficulty as you rate it, and it hasn't been the worst winter either. I mean, when you start getting stranded in airports in Nebraska and out in Chicago, that's when life gets a little more tricky, I think, in basketball season. There hasn't been that. That's been a benefit, but what's the price that's been paid for this?
It's interesting you mentioned Nebraska, Nestor, because we had some of the best weather in Nebraska. We left here, I'm thinking probably last year we left here and the temperature was about 35 degrees. We got out there in Lincoln, Nebraska, it was 62. There was no snow on the ground. The only problem we've had really came last year at Penn State. When we got snowed in, the plane couldn't get in, the charter plane, so we had to make a decision. Do you stay overnight, go back to the hotel? But the hotel's got problems because they got people coming in for those rooms. So we just got right back on the bus and drove back on the bus from State College, Pennsylvania. And that's been the only problem we've had. As far as planes delayed and so forth this year, maybe once, because these charters take other teams to other cities, drop them off and come pick us up and take us back or wherever we're going. So we're not the only team that they take care of. And I think maybe once or twice we might have had a 30-minute delay because of weather conditions somewhere else in Boston or Connecticut or wherever the plane was coming from. But it really hasn't been a problem at all. The hotels have been terrific. And the airports the longest flight we have is Nebraska, which is equal to Miami if we were still in the ACC. So there's no difference there. It's a little colder in Chicago, a little colder up there in Wisconsin, but, you go with the flow. It really hasn't been that bad at all.
What do you like about the team right now heading into this week? I mean, I like that they sort of righted the ship a little bit, and I like that they still have Melo. I don't like that they're not as deep as they would like to be, obviously with the injuries.
Well, with Checo going down, I think it hurt a lot because it shortens your bench. But it was kind of like 1-for-1. Checo, they lost with surgery, successful surgery, and then Deion Wiley comes back, and they're slowly working him back into the rotation. So he's going with 10 guys, and those 10 guys are all producing. The thing I like the best about him is they've been able to win these games when it looks like they weren't going to win the games. Like the last game at home that they played, and they knocked off Michigan State in that shot by Melo Trimble. I mean, he's done that so many times, and they live on the edge, And it caught up to them a couple of times. When they had that 3-game losing streak, you would think the world was about to come to an end. And all I pointed out was the fact the team was 22-7. That's not too bad. And then they righted the ship against Michigan State and played probably their best game of the year, the game before at Rutgers, when everything came together to snap that 3-game losing streak. And the thing I like about it, it's Melo's team. Everybody knows that. Everybody in the building knew he was going to take the last shot against Michigan State, and they still couldn't stop him. But I like the other guys stepping up when they have to. And sometimes the guy you least expect to take a giant step forward, like DeMonte Dodd, had a terrific game up at Rutgers. He's not a big scorer, but he contributed pretty good in that game. And L.G. Gill gets a start. He has 10 points. He had 10 points since, I think, the 3rd game of the year. So I think it's pretty good balance that Mark has, and I think you want your teams to always peak this time of the year. You don't want them to fizzle out at the very end of the schedule. And they had to win that game against Michigan State to get in that top 4 seeds of the Big Ten tournament. Something they had to get. They didn't talk about it, but you know in the back of their minds they all knew, man, if we don't win this, we're going to be in trouble. But they did, and now they start clean. The great thing about the Big Ten tournament being here and Maryland playing Friday night, the last game, they get 5 days off to relax. Not relax, but at least get their legs back. And I think Coach Turgeon is going to give them a couple of days off just to rest, because a lot of guys have played a tremendous amount of minutes this year.
Well, far be it from me to be Pollyanna, but sometimes the best things in life that happen are the worst things, and certainly where the Terps were with Minnesota, where they were with Iowa. I mean, you talk about that homecoming and really kind of having it wrecked by some bad basketball that day. Coming out of that, having Melo be the one that hit that shot against Michigan State, and knowing the pedigree of Michigan State, knowing that's Tom Izzo over there, knowing that next weekend you're going to see this tournament and host this tournament and have some pressure on you to do well and at least get through a game or two and try to get to the final in the tournament on your home turf. The Minnesota-Iowa thing needed to sort of get washed out, and I think it has been.
I do too. And the thing about Minnesota, that's a very, very good team. We beat them up there by 6 or 7 points, and we lost to them in College Park, and that was a pretty good beating, 89-75. That one really stung, and that was the middle of that 3-game losing streak. Then they come back, and I really thought they'd bounce back against Iowa, because when you win at Iowa, you should certainly beat them on your own home floor. Well, that didn't happen. And that was kind of a wake-up call, I think, that they realized, we've still got something good to do here. We can still salvage something. But, man, we got to get our act together these last couple of games, or we're going to go to that tournament. You do not want to be a number 6 or 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament, or 8 seed, anything like that. And if we continue the way we're going now, we're going to end up in a bad bracket. So I'm not sure if the guys all kind of said amongst themselves without the coaches, hey, we're good. We've won 22 games. Let's get these last couple of games and get some momentum going into the tournament. I would imagine that's what they did. And I mean, these kids have all been under pressure situations before, so there's nothing new to them. And I think Mark Turgeon and his staff with Dustin Clark and Mino Ranson and Cliff Warren have just done a terrific job. And I think he's got one of the best staffs in the country, not only coaching these guys, but recruiting to get new kids coming into Maryland.
Well, you'll never get me to say anything bad about Bino Ranson. I've told you, I coached one team in my life in the winter of 1989 with my pal Mike Fountain, and Bino Ranson was my star point guard on my rec league, Rosedale Middle Rec League team.
No kidding.
I coached Bino Ranson. He was my guy. Yes.
Hey, Nestor, Bino could play, couldn't he?
Bino was ambidextrous when he was 9 years old. I'm not making this up. He had no conscience, and I always tell him that. I mean, all the kid did was shoot, but he was a great player and a great kid, and I can't talk about him without bursting with pride. Hey, Johnny, I didn't coach 100 teams. I'm not Gary Williams, you know what I mean? I coached one team in my life, and that kid played on my team. It's uncanny. And one day he's going to cut nets down, and one day he's going to be a D1 head coach. I don't have any doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about Bino is everybody loves him. And everybody in Baltimore knows him, and everybody respects him. One of my grandsons lives up in Bel Air, and he's an 8th grader, and he's going to go to St. Paul's High School next year to play basketball for St. Paul's. as a freshman. He's a good point guard, good shooter. And he was thrilled that Bino Ranson came to a game at John Carroll in Bel Air. And he said, you should have seen everybody flock around Bino when he walked in that gym. So everybody knows him, everybody respects him, and especially young people. And to see the way he operates and interacts with young kids, it's terrific. And I can see why they believe in him. And he's such a role model for all young basketball players.
Well, I knew him when he was 9, 10 years old, and he's turned into a tremendous person. And I know they had a tragedy up there at John Carroll, too. I want to make sure I point that out and send some strength and some love up to those folks. Johnny, I'm sending strength and love to you. You got a national season to call. You got Terps basketball here this week. We'll keep you up nice and late on Friday night. It's always great to hear your voice, always great to connect with you. And good times ahead. I mean, we're going to have a bracket on Sunday night. Maybe the Terps can win this thing this weekend and get after it pretty good, and it's going to be fun down there.
Hey, Nestor, anytime I can come on with you, just give me a call, man. Always my pleasure.
You got it. Johnny Holiday, you can find him out there on Twitter. He is the Holiday Kid because he is a kid forever. Next time I have him on, I'm going to ask him his favorite old rock and roll band. I need to get some sock hop tips from the master himself, Johnny Holiday, also my Facebook friend. We're streaming live out on Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Want to go to London with us? By all means. Last week of September, we've got space for you. We've got a beautiful trip we're putting together for the Ravens trip to London. You can email me, nasty at WNST.net. You can learn more under the Road Trips tab at WNST.net. We're also going to be doing Nashville, Green Bay, Minnesota, Oakland, waiting on the schedule to come out next month. Second week of April, we'll have that, the draft, the combine. The Ravens were in Indianapolis last week. Everybody was there except the Redskins general manager. That's my little cheap shot to Johnny Holiday's Southern crowd down there with the Redskins folks. But you can find me anywhere the internet is served. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook. And if there's any breaking news at all this week, and the Ravens could certainly have that through free agency, as could the Terps, the Orioles down at spring training, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That's brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here bringing you home on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.